welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of many, many books, who is here to talk about one in particular, the second installment in an exciting new series of thrillers. Welcome to the show. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Absolutely. So I'm Traci Hunter Abramson, and I'm former CIA. I've written Victim Number 8 is my 49th novel. So, but I live in the East Coast. I live in Virginia, just south of DC. Um, and Victim Number 8 is it's the second book in the Luke Steele series. It is the same main characters that go through the series, but I do always write so that if you pick up book 2, you won't be lost. So all of the backstory that you would need to know from book 1 is in book 2. But it's just a lot of fun. It has the main male character, Luke, he's in the Marine Corps and he's the military aide to the president. So he works at the White House. I just had a friend who did that, so it was kind of a fun background to give somebody. And then he's paired with an FBI special agent who works with the behavioral analysis unit. So it's just them going through and their friendship. They're working the same situation from opposite ends, and together they discover things that people wouldn't have found otherwise had they not known each other. So just kind of a fun dynamic.
It's a super fun dynamic, and it is an absolutely unputdownable thriller. It's like so fast-paced and so compulsively readable. Um,
Well, thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Before we talk about it anymore, I'd love if you could just tell us a little bit more about your background and your path to writing. I'm really curious about how, your previous experiences in the CIA that you mentioned,
Yeah.
not they shaped the content of your books, but have they shaped your approach to writing at all, or the reasons you got interested in writing?
I mean, I think so. I was with the agency for 6 years, and I was there. I started just after the or just before the Berlin Wall came down. And then I was there through the first Gulf War, so a little past that. So it was the whole breakup of the Soviet Union and things like that. But then, of course, I've lived in the DC area this whole time. So I have a lot of friends who work in that space still, and I'm right next to Marine Corps, the Quantico Marine Corps base. So that definitely shapes what I'm writing, just because I'm seeing how things have changed over the years. Um, but my first foray into writing, I was just somebody who loved to write. I mean, it starts with journals and, kind of that what if question as far as you see things happen. It's like, well, what if it was this, or what if that happened? And just that imagination. Um, but I basically, when I started, I saw a gap in the market. There really wasn't a lot of adult fiction that was friendly to younger readers. And so that's what I said about trying to fill, is having books that, a 12-year-old could be reading it with grandma, and the blush factor is low. um, there's not gore on the page. So it's like I mean, yes, it's a thriller. There's going to be some violence, but everything is going to allow the reader to decide how far their imagination wants to take them, instead of dictating what they have to see, through their mind's eye. So that's really what got me started. And I went to the bookstore and just started pulling books off the shelf, saying, where would my book go? And started pulling publishers from that. And that's how I found my initial publisher, was doing exactly that. And I've been with the same overall publishing house the whole time. So I've been with two different publishers, but they're both owned by the same company. So
Oh, that is such an interesting story, and you are absolutely correct that it was a gap in the market.
yeah.
I remember being a teen, or like a young teen in the 90s, and I
Hmm.
was a very advanced reader, but I was very naive as well. And so,
Right.
but I was reading Tom Clancy and Stephen King, and that makes you get accustomed to a lot of intense content at a very
Right.
young age. So,
Yeah, and I'm the one that, I just don't have, like people who want the thrills of Clancy, I'm still going to have it. I'm just not going to go into, first of all, I'm not going to go into all the, the gauge of the weapon and, all of the little details. I may know them, but, what a preferred weapon might be, but I'm not going to necessarily go into those details. There are people who love that. But mine tends to be kind of a broader audience version of what some of those authors have written.
Mhm. Absolutely. And it still gives like younger readers a chance to, you know, experience like ideas and political situations, international stuff that's still very
Right.
like sophisticated and challenging that will grow them as readers, but without being like disturbing or traumatic for them.
Right. That's the hope.
Yeah. So I'd love if we could talk a little bit about Luke Steele, roughly where he finds himself at the end of the first installment, Hometown Vendetta, because it makes for a very interesting emotional journey for him in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically one of the challenges he has is he's lost somebody very close to him at the end of the first book and is feeling a lot of guilt over it. And because of that, he's struggling with getting into relationships. His relationship with Amberlyn, they were kind of starting into this romance, and he's struggling to feel like worthy of somebody's love because he's basically going through a post-traumatic stress scenario. And I didn't really anticipate this book going that direction, but it really did end up touching on the subject of mental health, especially for people who are in the armed forces. That, I remember we used to have to go through psych evals on occasion, with the CIA. And when we were dealing with big issues, I mean, it has an effect on you. And you're trained to compartmentalize things as whether it's an intelligence officer, a military officer, or military, whether enlisted or officer or whatever. But you do have those times where you have to pull those emotions off the shelf and say, I have to deal with them now. Like this is going to now start impacting my life, and that's where Luke finds himself is it's impacting his life, and he's got to face the fact that maybe I need some help with this, and I need to get beyond just what's inside my head.
Hmm. Compartmentalization is an interesting theme, I think, because I think you also see that like in his relationship with Amberlyn, who you mentioned before. Um,
Hmm.
I love their sort of the history of the first book of sort of being undercover as a couple and
Yeah,
how personal and private and professional and personal get all mixed up and stuff like that. So there's a lot of like boundaries sort of
yeah.
breaking down for Luke at this period.
Well, and the other thing too is in the first book, I go pretty heavily into the fact that Luke was bullied a lot in high school, and he he doesn't again he believes the rumors of that people didn't treat him as though he mattered, and that can be a hard space to go, but their fake relationship is going back to he has to go to a high school reunion, and so Amberlyn's seeing him face these former demons, and so that establishes bonds between them that I think wouldn't have happened had they not gone through those traumas together. So as I speak about my fictional characters as though they're real people, because in my mind they are.
I think they have to be a little bit, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm curious about the romance elements, because you've also written romance in addition to your thrillers, and here,
Right.
you have the mixing. Why do you think those flavors go so well together, and why you like playing in those spaces together?
I think a lot of it is just as readers, we love to see the emotional journeys of our characters. And one of the biggest things is the relationships. We want to see the relationships. And usually, if I don't have a romance, there's some kind of family relationship that is significant because there are our friendships and our romances in our real lives, they're not stagnant. They're constantly evolving and changing. And so I think that's one thing I love about it because there is its own sense of suspense and tension in are these characters acting in a way that is going to lead to their happily ever after, or are they doing things that even if it's inadvertent that they're sabotaging themselves. So I think that's one of the things I enjoy.
Nice. And I like how the pacing of both sort of work together because it is like very slow burny in terms of how romances go, but the plot and the political and the international relation aspects are very fast paced and very paced,
Right.
move really fast, and that actually balances itself out very nicely.
Well, thank you. And for me, it's just I'm a complete discovery writer, so I never quite know what's going to happen in my books until I get there. And so it's always interesting to me when I say, "Oh, wow, it actually did work," you know. So.
Was it interesting and fun or challenging or all of them to let's see, how do I phrase this? Look at a bigger stage, because the first book is a little bit more domestic in its focus. You know,
Mhm.
it has a smaller, a little bit more intimate also in some of the storytelling and the dynamics and the setting. The second one blows it out a lot more, and you do have international intrigue and travel.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about like what was exciting about that and what was scary or challenging about that.
So I've done both pretty consistently. And one thing I love is I joke about I don't really love to do research, but then I really do research a lot because I love to travel. And I was researching a book that's actually set in Asia that will come out in February. And when researching that, I stopped in Istanbul on my way home. I was like, okay, I'm flying Turkish Air. How can I not take this opportunity? And I was only there for 24 hours, and those 24 hours literally seeded a lot of the international intrigue of this book. And I'd already touched on Turkey being relevant in the first book, and I can't even remember. I think I knew I was going to be going to Turkey at that point, but I didn't anticipate it to take as much of a role as I did. But of course, coming from the space where I was working CIA, all of my assignments there, because I had three different jobs while I was with during those 6 years, they all were kind of top level looking down. So I was never like in one specific area of the world. I always was looking at the whole world. And so, I can still name, I don't know how many countries it is now. I think it's now like 197 countries that are officially recognized, but I can still name them, and I can maybe can't tell you exactly like, okay, was Armenia or Azerbaijan on this side, but I can tell you that it's Georgia's right next to it, and those kind of things. So most of the borders and things like that I'm already pretty familiar with. And I think that makes it easier for me to write on that big stage, because I also love the CIA's World Fact Book. I'll pull that out, look it up now, all the time to see what are the political issues right now in those spaces. And that was where I got some of the conflicts, was just pulling it from my old, I've got the book downstairs, but I looked at the updated version.
Ooh.
1995 didn't help me a whole lot.
Yeah, things have changed in this end.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious about, depicting intelligence work as you do. And do you feel like as you do so, do you feel like you are dispelling myths or misconceptions that you might see in film or TV? Like, what's your approach to depicting like the actual workaday stuff?
You know, in all honesty, a lot of the work that we do behind those closed doors is pretty boring, and it's because we're looking for that needle in a haystack all the time. But I think that there are a lot of aspects that I probably inadvertently put in that are just instinctive. Um, I don't really, because I know what it looks like. I'm trying to create a fictional world that is believable, that the CI is still going to say, yes, it's okay to publish this, because they do have to clear my manuscripts. Um, but part of my time during the first Gulf War, I actually worked as a liaison officer. So I worked with FBI, NSA, DIA, all the alphabet soup, as well as the military. And I do think there's a little bit of dispelling the falsities. Like we don't call people CIA agents. We're CIA officers or case officers or handlers or targeting officers, or there's all these different terms we would use. Um, and so I think because I I don't use those terminologies, I think it becomes more friendly and comfortable for readers as they see them repeatedly you know in books that are written with authority.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
Hmm. I'm curious about what might be next for Luke and Amber Lynn, I know that like we don't really want to talk about the ending of this one too much, and I actually, yeah, don't want to spoil anything. But like, are you going to write more in the series? Are you going to spend time in other series for a time? What's on your horizon?
So I'm doing both. So the third book in the Luke Steele series is actually called Silent Strike. I just sent it to my editor. They're sending it forward for all the final approvals in this month. So that one is due to come out in September of 2026. And yeah, it was another one that was just a lot of fun to build, and just let the characters continue progressing in their relationships, in their space. But some of it was based on some real life scenarios that I'd experienced, and some of it was just okay. Again, the big what if question: what if this were to happen? But we pick up pretty close to where victim number 8 finishes, because it's kind of during that right in the holiday season. And so we're going to see him go through Christmas and New Year's and that together. And then being this time, they're going to have to travel to Europe.
Right.
So, because, of course I had been to Europe recently, and I was like, oh, this is a perfect place. So, they're going to be going to Czechia, and it's, I love taking that little bits of authenticity of having walked the roads that they'll walk, and do some of those, pulling some of that setting in. And again, just it was mostly the biggest challenge was trying to find what can they do. A military aide to the president and an FBI officer working behavioral analysis should not be working together. So what would make them put them in the space where they would have to? And then not make it feel like it's repeating. So it took me a little bit of time. I was like, okay, I've got this one now. So now I've got to come forward to, this is going to be at least a 4-book series. So I kind of know the relationship part of this fourth book. I have no idea what the plot will be. So, and then I have Staged Evidence is in my other series, the Pen and Dagger series, that'll come out in April, but that'll be the next book I write, will be the next one in that series. So,
Ooh.
so yeah, I'm always running. I think I have 4 releases for the next 2 years,
Oh my gosh.
not including the paperback releases. So I have those in addition. So I'm a busy writer.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Well, I appreciate, doubly then you taking the time to talk to us with our show. Thank you so much for your time and for sharing your book with us.
Well, thanks for having me.
You're so welcome. Okay, listeners, it's your turn. Please check out victim number 8. And while you're at it, you might as well check out Hometown Vendetta first. It is available now as we record. It will be available when you hear this. So head to your favorite bookstore or library or website. Do you have a favorite bookstore that you like to refer people to?
I don't really have a preference. Like usually it's Amazon, or deseretbook.com is another one. But yeah, that's pretty much everywhere you can find books.
Excellent. All right. Thank you all for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.